With me now in studio is Daniel Tzemach, I-24 News defense correspondent, and Dr. Emily Landau with the Institute for National Security Studies. Daniel, I want to start with you because there's now new reaction from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard soldiers in response to what the British Marines did in seizing that tanker.
Yeah, Jeff, we heard in the last couple of hours from the IRGC saying that in light of the fact that the British have indeed seized their oil tanker, that now Iran is threatening to also seize a British oil tanker. Now, for now, that's just a threat. It's a continuation of that war of words that we've been hearing about that you just discussed. But if they indeed do that, then obviously we're looking at a very different picture here, taking concrete action. We'll have to see what the reaction will be in the coming hours. The story is still obviously developing.
All right. And Emily, we are now 48 hours away from this massive moment in the future of the nuclear deal. Iran says, right, that we're going to increase to whatever we need from 3.67. What number, perhaps, could we be looking at? What number should we be looking at as a scary barometer if they do go up from that?
Well, they're probably aiming towards 20% enrichment. Which will be very worrying. They really have no need to enrich to 20%. They have one small reactor, the Tehran research reactor, that runs on 20% enriched uranium to make the fuel for that reactor. But they can, of course, buy this on the open market. They have no need to enrich to 20%.
But 20% isn't close to nuclear weapons grade.
It is close because when you enrich to 20%, you're actually about 90% of the way to the over 90% that you need for fissile materials. So that would be much more worrying than increasing their stockpile of low enriched uranium.
A big stockpile of low level is not as dangerous as
enriching to a higher level.
So basically, it's easier, right, to get from like 3.5%. It's more difficult and more worrisome when you get from 3.5% to 20, because the jump to 90 from 20
is very close. It's very close.
So what's the deal now with the Iraq nuclear reactor? The fact that we're hearing that it may be reopened in a few weeks is...
I mean, this is ridiculous. First of all, remember, if the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, hadn't legitimized Iran's so-called civilian nuclear program, enriching uranium, etc., Iran wouldn't have been able to make these threats in the first place, right? The only reason they can now threaten to increase their stockpile, to enrich to higher levels, is all because the deal legitimized their enrichment program.
But the Iraq reactor was shut, wasn't it shuttered?
But Iraq is even worse, because here this was supposed to be disabled completely. They were supposed to pour cement into the heart of this reactor, and it was supposed to be rendered inoperable.
And the fact that they say they can get it back up and running this month, in a few weeks.
Well, yeah, in a week, suddenly they can have it up and running, because what we found out later was that they only poured cement into the surrounding pipings. And then we heard from the Iranians that they actually pulled one over on the P5+1, and they had purchased new piping before that. So they have the piping. All they have to do is take out the piping where they poured the cement into it and put in the new piping, and Iraq is up and running. What does this say about the JCPOA? It's a sham.
And Daniel, again, we are 48 hours away from Iran, and we're hearing now, really, if they go to 20%, which could happen, that's a big worry. I'd imagine the IDF, they are aware of different things they can do in response, different levels of response.
Yeah, the Israeli intelligence conglomerate as a whole definitely has a list of things that they could do. But what we really could look at is what has been done in the past, or what at least has been attributed to Israel in the past, whether it be attacks, cyber attacks on nuclear facilities in Iran, attacks on personnel, being nuclear scientists in Iran, and of course what will likely happen is a strong message from Israeli Prime Minister and Defense Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the crossing of a red line or something of that sort. So if this is indeed passed on Sunday, it's very likely that we'll hear some rhetoric again. We might even see some action taken.
And with a few years ago, with names that are still very much in the news, with Ehud Barak and Netanyahu, Israel was very close to an attack on Iran's nuclear program. If Iran does resume on Sunday, like you said, up to 20%, knowing that from 20 to 90 and getting yourself on the path to weapons-grade uranium is very quick, how urgent is it to do, if that was the option, how urgent is it to do a strike, or can the IDF or Israeli authorities kind of see if the infrastructure really can handle it?
Well, I don't expect to see Israel taking any action in the, short to medium term. I think that Israel will be watching the international actors. I mean, we know where the United States stands. A big question is how the Europeans are going to react to this. I mean, they have said that there will be consequences. They've promised a stronger reaction. But we really need to see them standing shoulder to shoulder with the Americans, saying that Iran breaching its obligations according to the Iran nuclear deal is unacceptable. And remember, the Iranians keep saying all these steps are reversible. In other words, they're leaving a window open, a door open to reverse course. And they're going to be very careful about going too far, because they could find themselves up against much harsher, certainly European steps, but also American steps.
Based on what you know, do you think that this is all bark and no bite, or really come Sunday, we're going to enter a new phase here?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, they might start, they won't go straight to 20%. I'm sure that they will start, just going up to 5%, let's say, maybe a little bit higher than that.
But they'll
see what the reaction is. Their message always is to the Europeans. They want the Europeans to get the Americans to get off their back with the sanctions. If that happens, that would be a very poor message, obviously. What we need is a message of firmness from the Europeans and the Americans. And so we'll see what happens on Sunday.
Just 48 hours away, and we will stay on top of it here on I-24 News. Thank you so much for your expertise, Dr. Emily Landau and Daniel Tzemach as well.